Good morning, everybody. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. I want to thank all of you. Thank you so very much for being here today. We are here to remember and to commemorate the sacrifices of so many, not just the soldiers, but the civilians during World War II in the Philippines. And I know so many people have come far and wide from the Philippines, across the United States, from England, from everywhere. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Why are we here today? We are here to show the world that the brotherhood between the United States and the Philippines was forged in the trenches of Bataan and Corregidor almost 75 years ago. And nobody can break that brotherhood. We have waited almost 75 years for this seminal point of World War II history to be included in the U.S. history. So on July 14th of this year, history was made when World War II in the Philippines was included in the grade 11 U.S. History Curriculum Framework, Chapter 16. But this is just the first step, the first of many steps. It took so much effort from so many people here. I want to thank them for their support. We would not have reached this juncture if not for their support. Now, what's included in the curriculum framework? The creation of the Philippine Commonwealth, which was inaugurated on November 15, 1935. And of course, this was brought about by the Tidings-McDuffie Act, which was passed here in the United States in 1934, which provided for the establishment of a Philippine Commonwealth government in preparation for its independence in 10 years. However, it also limited the immigration of Filipinos into the United States to 50 per year and reclassified the Filipinos living here, the Filipino nationals living here, as aliens. As you all know, when President Franklin Roosevelt declared war and said that it was a sudden and deliberate attack, war was already going on in Asia, first in 1931, Manchuria, and then in 1937 in China. So in 1940, Japan already had military bases in Indochina. July 22nd, 1941, it occupied Indochina. 4 days later, on July 26, 1941, the U.S. Army Forces in the Far East was created by the War Department, signed by President Roosevelt, and what it was it federalized all organized units in the Philippines under the service of the United States Army Forces in the Far East. And its commanding officer was General Douglas MacArthur. That is included in the curriculum. It took us a while. Actually, it was only in March of this year that the Instructional Quality Commission at the Department of Education, the IQC, or Instructional Quality Commission, is the body that oversees the curriculum. So it's composed of a commission. It's a very democratic process whereby 2 drafts were issued to the public for review. And so it was only March this year that they accepted the fact that Filipinos were part of the U.S. Army. Also in March, they included the word strategic to retreat. So that was a major breakthrough, but they had not accepted at that time our recommendations, the other recommendations. The Battle of Bataan will be an important part of this curriculum framework. And as you know, the troops fought in Bataan without any air support. In January, they were already on half rations. February, there was no longer any quinine that was distributed to the soldiers. And by March, they were already on quarter rations. And they were heavily, the soldiers suffered from massive disease and starvation. But despite that, they held Bataan for 99 days, disrupting the timetable of the Imperial Japanese Army of 50 days. So despite massive disease, massive starvation, and fighting without any air support, they delayed the timetable of the Imperial Japanese Army. This is now in the curriculum framework. The Bataan Death March. The Bataan Death March is, until now, portrayed as the biggest single surrender in US military history. But that will no longer be, because in the framework, as I mentioned, the Filipino and American troops of the US Army forces in the Far East delayed the timetable. After suffering for 99 days in Bataan, the USAFFE troops were forced to surrender under Major General Edward King. Approximately 75,000 soldiers, consisting of 63,000 Filipinos and 12,000 Americans, were forced to surrender. They were forced to march some 60 miles away in triple-digit temperature in April, the hottest month of the year. Those who could no longer go on were either beaten, bayoneted, shot, some were even beheaded. Approximately 300 officers and non-commissioned officers were executed in the infamous Pantingan River Massacre. Once reaching their prison camp at Camp O'Donnell, another 20,000 Filipinos and 1,600 American soldiers died. A month later, on May 6, 1942, General Jonathan Wainwright was forced to surrender the rest of the Philippines. The role of the guerrillas. This is now included in the new curriculum framework. Up to now, the seminal role of the guerrillas has not been included in US history. And even in the books, it is not discussed how they sacrificed, the lengths they went through to gather reconnaissance, to sabotage Japanese installations. As early as the end of 1942, guerrilla groups were being formed, and one of the most effective guerrillas was the Hunters ROTC guerrillas. We will be privileged today to hear one of the sons of the one of the key members of the Hunters ROTC guerrillas, Mr. Manuel de Ocampo. So we will hear later this afternoon about how the guerrillas played a very seminal role during the liberation. I don't think there would have been a liberation without the amount of work that the guerrillas did before the liberation. The US prisoners of war in hell ships. This has not been taught in U.S. high schools. After the conditional release of the Filipino prisoners from Camp O'Donnell, and I said conditional because not everybody was released. An example here is Mr. Praculo Bualat of the 92nd Coast Artillery. We will honor him today. He is 99 years old. Because there was nobody to vouch for him, he was forced to work in a manganese mine. And so the American soldiers, starting in June, were moved to other prison camps, Cabanatuan, Palawan, and eventually they were used as slave laborers in labor camps in Asia, Japan, China, Korea, and Formosa. So about 4,000, over 4,000 of them died by friendly fire because the ships they were in, they were called hell ships, as you can imagine, the deplorable conditions they were in. They were unmarked merchant ships, and they were put in the holds of the ships. So over 4,000 of them died by friendly fire. Now, this will now be learned by high school students in California. The battles of Leyte Gulf. We have somebody here, Mickey Ganich, with the USS Pennsylvania, who took part in the battles of Leyte Gulf. Not too many people know that this is the largest naval battle in U.S. history, and yet it is not taught in high schools. Now it will become part of the grade 11 U.S. history curriculum framework. It destroyed the Imperial Japanese Navy, and that is the significance of the battles of Leyte Gulf. The Battle of Manila and the destruction of Manila, which took place between February and March 1945. Manila, before the war, was considered the Pearl of the Orient. After the Battle of Manila, approximately 100,000 civilians died, and it became the second most devastated city in the world after Warsaw, Poland. So these are the things that are included now in the history curriculum framework. However, this is just the first step. There are 77 high school districts in California consisting of approximately over 1,300 high schools. It is ultimately up to each school district to implement this. So we are asking for your help to ask your superintendents. If you have children or grandchildren in high school, ask their teachers, will this be taught? Now this is part of U.S. history. We need the community to rally together so that this can be taught. Also, in anticipation, we are creating a sample curriculum to ensure that this seminal point of World War II history will be taught in accordance with our recommendations. Now I am asking you, please go to your superintendents. Please let them know that this has been approved, because this will not move without your support. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning, because California is one of the two largest textbook consumers in the United States, the other one being Texas. And because they are one of the largest consumers, the textbook publishers are mandated to change their textbooks in accordance with the new curriculum framework. So the ramification of this is nationwide, because these books will be distributed nationally. So this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning but we need your help. We need to work on this so that the legacy of those who made so much sacrifice during World War II in the Philippines will be learned, not just in the United States, but in the Philippines and hopefully Japan. So I want to thank all of you again for being here. We have a full program today. I'm asking you to stay around for the program for the entire day because we have so much to learn. I have so much to learn. I'm only beginning to learn, actually. But thank you so very much. Thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to all of our esteemed guests who came here today. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay!